The single biggest opportunity in women's football is just around the corner. There are now 2 days left until the FIFA World Cup curtain raiser in France, as the nations involved prepare to hit the ground running. It's nearly time for the talking to stop and the action to start, but first, we think we've got a little bit more discussion left in us. Welcome to the 4th SportSpiel FIFA World Cup Special. Yes, it's time for the pod to get analytical and insightful, which is why, for this special episode, Will and myself are joined by a third guest voice. It's a very warm welcome to the show, to Love Sport Radio and Sportsbeat, Ella Jerman.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast,
Thank
Ella.
you very much for having me.
Yeah, how are things at the moment?
Yeah, things are good. 4 days now to the Women's World Cup to start, so getting really, really excited. It's going to be one of the best Junes yet.
And with that, you've just blown our cover that we're actually recording this on Monday, when this goes out on Wednesday.
Sorry about that.
We'll put that to the side. But everyone is obviously buzzing now that we're in the week that the World Cup actually gets up and running. I think we can feel the fever pitch growing. And did everyone watch the BBC One documentary that was put out last night?
I've got 4 minutes left to watch. I didn't have time on the train here, but I think I've watched the most important bits.
I mean, to be honest, those 4 minutes changed the story entirely, so
I don't know what could be happening next.
Of course, there's plenty to come, and I should add as well, Ella, that you've joined our Offside Rule podcast.
Yes.
Family as well.
Yeah, ahead of the World Cup, so yeah, plenty of going on this month.
Plenty coming on. We've all got our schedules of stuff that we've got to put out during the tournament that was sent through to us, and of course that ties in beautifully with the fact that they're working with us on our World Cup specials as well. So our first episode with Mary Earps has just gone up on their website as well, so you can go and check it all out there. Anyway, before we crack on with this episode, let's remind you all, the listeners, that you can still catch our previous World Cup specials. We've put out 3 so far. The first one, as I said, with Lioness's goalkeeper Mary Earps, and then our second one was with former defender Laura Bassett, who coincidentally announced her retirement on the day that we put out that episode as well. So happy retirement to Laura. And then our third episode, of course, sees Reading's Remy Allen returning to the podcast as well. So do catch those. Don't forget to join us on social media. We're at sportspielpod on all our accounts. But on today's agenda, we're talking the Lionesses and possible starting lineups that they may have for their opener against Scotland. And we're also going to take a look at Shelley Kerr's side and what we can expect from them. Part 2 on this episode looks at the tournament as a whole, as we bring you some of our predictions as well. Time will tell how accurate they are. We'll get started after this. So now is the time for the Lionesses football to do the talking. Next up for Phil Neville's side is the Group D opener against Scotland on Sunday, but it hasn't been the smoothest of send-offs, I think we can all agree on, for the Lionesses, because they lost their final warm-up game against New Zealand 1-0. So my first question to throw open on this show is, will that New Zealand defeat affect anything in terms of preparation or maybe mindset?
I think what Karen Carney said after the game on Saturday was really important, how she did say it's better to get a loss like that out of the way before the tournament starts. In a way, there's been such a buzz about the Lionesses lately, and a lot of people are tipping us as favourites of the tournament, and I think that could be quite a dangerous mindset to go into the tournament with as well. So had we won against New Zealand, then people might have been like, oh great, we're in great form, we've got this in the bag. But actually, I think it could be a bit of a needed reality check for Phil Neville's side going into Sunday's game. Yeah, I suppose that's the flip side, if you like, is maybe they need that result to bring them a bit down to earth, because I think we've all been guilty in the past and with previous tournaments of getting a little bit carried away, perhaps. Yeah, I think it's effectively a kick up the arse that I don't necessarily think the players... Beautifully put, by the way.
You know me. I don't necessarily think the players would have needed it, but I think we as supporters needed it, because we're the ones taking them. We're the ones getting carried away, and I look at it the same way the way that England's male cricketers have been treated in the lead up to this World Cup, seen as the overall favourites. There's no way they're going to lose. We're not entirely sure at the time of recording what the result against Pakistan was today, but they've been run really close against a team that haven't performed very well for the last few months. But it's best to have a result like that, have a performance like that now, get it out of the way, so by the time the actual tournament comes around and the really tough games kick on, then they'll be in the best possible position. But also, the 2 warm-up games that England have been really difficult to tell what's going to happen, because neither is the first choice 11 he's going to be going with. There was a mixture and a matchup of players that would necessarily not have played together much before, so we're still quite unsure as to where England are going to be come Sunday.
Has there been too much rotation?
Possibly, yes. I think after the Denmark game, I think it was only Nikita Paris who kept her place in the side.
10 changes he made, yeah.
That's it. And I think going into a World Cup, you really want to have what, say, the French side have, is that spine of the team that stays the same, of some strong figures in there. And we've changed it up so much that we haven't really sorted that out, and I think that reflects in our performances, of that lack of cohesion and players not really knowing what each other are doing. So, but equally, I like Phil Neville's philosophy. He mentioned it on the BBC One documentary, is they've all earned their place in the squad, and he wants to give them an opportunity to show what they can do. So it's a difficult one, because I think that's great, and I think he knows the potential that our squad have, and we've got a really good depth to our squad, which is why we're one of the favourites for the tournament. But at the same time, he needs to make his mind up on who's going to be the leading figures in that side.
I think what I've also seen, to throw this into the rotation argument as well, is obviously it's a really nice philosophy, being able to give everyone that opportunity and give them the chance to prove themselves, but at certain points do you need to actually set up those relationships in the team, and perhaps one of the strongest relationships in there is your defence and your goalkeeper. So maybe, it's something I've seen mentioned a few times before, is he should have set up with his first choice goalkeeper and his first choice defence before you tinker around with the rest of the team, if that's something we go along with.
Yeah, definitely. Going back to the previous point, it was interesting what Bev Priestman, Phil Neville's assistant, said after the She Believes Cup win on the documentary. She said that tells them that a squad can win, not just an 11. So their philosophy is that they want to create a 23 that they can trust, and that will go out there and do the job, not effectively an A and a B team. But for a tournament like this, you need to be ruthless. You need to have your best 11 players out there, and then you need to have the people in reserve that can come on impact subs in a similar way to we have a rugby. The substitutions in this tournament are going to be just as important as the starting 11.
So in terms of that, making it a 23 that believe they can all play a part and win, and I know we talk about trying to make an international team as much of a club situation as possible, but where do we draw that line? Because essentially this is a team that has just a few games in a short time span to get those results. And are we in danger of going too far into that club mentality for this?
Potentially, but I also think that's part of the appeal of the Lionesses at the moment. We all saw in the documentary how well they seem to genuinely get along. They seem to be really good mates and really support each other, and I think that sort of vibe in the dressing room must be really important to leading a team to a World Cup. So yeah, I sort of agree with Phil Neville. I think we do need that squad mentality, because as draining as World Cups can be, it's going to be a tough tournament in France this summer. You can't rely on just the experienced players or just the spine of that starting 11 to carry you through. I think even the players who might not get that much game time are going to play just as important a role.
And that is a question that's been asked quite a lot in the last few weeks and months from various reporters when they get an opportunity to talk with one of the squad members, and they always ask, what's the key strength? And the two things that keep coming out are the mentality, i.e. the bond between them all, and the versatility as well that's an offer. Are those essentially the two key weapons that England have in their arsenal when the tournament actually gets underway?
They're not going to be the only ones that have a good mentality, have a good team mentality. Obviously, it's a massively beneficial thing for them to have that. I remember reading things Kelly Smith has previously said in the past about the divisions in the dressing room back in the 90s and noughties, and to see where the girls are at now, massive difference. But I think versatility is something that could set England apart, in my opinion, because you've got so many players who could play so many different positions, and if you get an injury or if someone's not playing well or if you get a red card or something, England have the players. Lucy Bronze could step into central midfield, Rachel Daly could go left back, left wing, right wing up front. Someone like Kira Walsh or Karen Carney can move positions and have done for their clubs, and Nikita Paris can play up front or through the centre or on the wing. I think that is what really sets England apart from the other nations, because there are going to be other teams who have done similar build-ups, similar camps, have probably spent more time together, have similar mentalities, but England's ability to adapt, their potential ability to adapt, because we haven't actually seen it in action yet, is I think going to be crucial.
Like I said, it's mostly potential we've seen up until this point. So what do we, and maybe Phil Neville, what do we need to see more of from this squad?
We need to see more cohesion. I think in the last 2 warm-up games we've seen the players don't really look like they know what each other are doing. Sort of someone plays a ball through and the other person's got another idea, and against New Zealand we could have created some really good chances, but they weren't really in proper communication with each other. So I think what Will says is absolutely right. We've got versatility and we've got the potential to use that really well, but it could also prove to be a bit of a disaster. We've seen some games where, Lucy Bronze is an incredibly talented footballer, and we all know how good she is if you've watched her play, but we've seen times where she's gone into central midfield and looked a little bit lost. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly what they need to do, but they just need to have trust that when those players are in those positions, they can definitely get it right.
One of the key things that's come out as well is, all the players have said it, Phil Neville has said it as well as manager, is how much they are wanting to win and how that is the target this time around. They want to win it. They've said it over and over again. And when Phil Neville was on the Offside Rule podcast that came out on Friday, that was one of the key lines, if you like, that came out of his interview, because we do have this strange mentality in this country where we always want to play things down just in case things don't go to plan and you end up coming back with egg on your face. Do we see that as the right way to go about things? Because I suppose you could argue that in previous tournaments, think England golden generation days, it hasn't always played out as we would have liked.
I think to succeed in anything, you need to believe you're going to win. And the fact that Phil Neville is creating this environment where he's telling the players and getting the players to tell each other that they are going to win or are capable of winning, I think is crucial. And we've jumped on that hype. Simple as that. And it's good. It's good to feel confident going into a tournament. Yes, there is that possibility of massively failing, and it is a tough group, but I have no issue with this side going into the tournament believing and telling us that they believe they can win. I think it's not arrogant, because they know that there are some good teams in that, and they've said that. They've said some things about other players and other teams, but confidence is key, and belief is key in life, not just in football.
I completely agree with Will. I think look at the USA as an example. They go out there and play their football just believing they are natural born winners. They just have that mentality instilled in them, and look where it got them. They're the current World Cup champions. So yeah, and I agree with Will as well on the arrogance part. I don't think it's arrogant at all. England have definitely got the credentials to back it up. They just need that confidence to help them go out there and perform to their full potential.
It's something we see other successful sports people do it all the time. They always have that confidence in themselves, and they always back themselves 100%, and time again we see them succeed because of that. You could go across all sports. Hannah Rankin is one of our previous guests who I think exactly shows that exact same mentality, and again says it's just this weird British thing that we seem to have. We seem to want to just play things down. It's
something I obviously wasn't working with GB hockey at the time, but having spoken to the athletes that won gold in Rio, that is the mentality they went in with. They massively underperformed at the Champs Trophy about 2 months before. They were terrible. But they knew that they had the squad to go in and win, and they did. And it's interesting to see at the moment, because the men have had a new psychologist come in, new regime come in after Rio, where they didn't do so well, and they are succeeding at the moment, and they are starting to believe that they are genuine world beaters. And you can see that, whereas the women had a few changes, had a few things not that go their way, and you can see that they don't always believe they're going to win. And So to go back to our point, belief in yourself is so crucial in professional sport.
Mentality is so key. Now we come to the real strong debate side of things, which we could really talk about for hours, if not days.
Remy and I did.
There you
for
go.
A long time.
This is the point where we discuss the starting lineup that we think could be put out for England against Scotland in that opening game. I think we've all three of us have come along with the same idea in that we've got a lineup that we would like to put out if we were in charge, but then we've also got a lineup that we think will get put out by Phil Neville when it actually comes to game day. Again, this is where the versatility in terms of talking about it is our downside, because there's so many different options and players we could have picked. But we'll kick off with Ella and take us through your lineup that you would like to put out there, and maybe the one that you think we will actually see on that day.
This was a near impossible task. It's been distracting me so much all day.
Well, even before we started recording,
weeks.
we've been on about it endlessly.
Exactly. It's so hard to find a solution, because as we've said, we've got such strength in depth in our squad. But anyway, to move on with things, I'd start in goal. I think I'd put Karen Bardsley in goal. She's been solid between the six for Man City this season, pulled off some incredible saves in the FA Cup final to clinch them their second silverware. But I'll come on to what I think Phil will do a bit later, but I think Phil has said that he wants to rotate his goalkeepers in the tournament. My back line would be a back line we've rarely seen under Phil Neville. It'd be Lucy Bronze at right back, Steph Horton at centre back, alongside Millie Bright, along with Alex Greenwood at left back. And then we come to the whole debate of the midfield, which I think is causing everyone the biggest conundrum.
I think that's the biggest one, isn't it?
So personally, I can't bring myself to not put Fran Kirby in that team, just because I know the potential she has on her day. So I'd play in a 4-2-3-1. I'd have Kira Walsh and Jill Scott, Fran Kirby in front. Then I'd have Nikita Paris and Mead out wide, with Ellen White starting as our number 9.
And that lineup, coincidentally, is exactly the same lineup for what I think Phil Neville is going to do. Because I know he's talked about it before, the 4-2-3-1 versus the 4-3-3, and how he prefers the 4-2-3-1 and the team arguably prefer a 4-3-3. Not sure how that comes into the equation as well. Like, if you were a player, would you prefer to play what you want, or how the manager sees or thinks you are best placed to line up?
I've changed my mind several times today, arguing between two players, Fran Kirby and Karen Carney. And I've changed my mind subsequently to one I've written down, actually. So I have gone for a 4-3-3. And this is partly based on how they've performed in the warm-ups and stuff, but also on how I think they could approach the Scotland game, or they should approach Scotland. So I've gone with the same back five. Bardsley, Bronze, Horton, Brighton, Greenwood. Although I think Abby McManus has a strong case to be partnered alongside Steph Horton. And then my midfield 3, Jade Moore, Jill Scott and Karen Carney, playing behind Beth Mees, Nikita Paris and Ellen White. So no Fran Kirby.
Yes, you heard it, everyone. He's left Fran Kirby out of his starting 11.
It was my thinking is, in terms of picking Walsh, not picking Walsh, is that Scotland they're quite quick up front, and Jade Moore brings that disruptive play in the centre of midfield, which Walsh doesn't have quite so strongly. So I just think breaking up the likes of Erin Cuthbert and Jane Ross and Kim Little, getting in there, getting in tackles, I think that's why I've gone for Moore over Walsh just for this game. If she's fit, obviously there is a slight question mark. And then I went with Karen Carney purely because I thought she was the best player in the 2 recent warm-up games. She made things happen, and I genuinely thought about putting Nikita Paris through the centre and not playing Ellen White. But then I thought, you want Ellen White because she'll get you goals, and she's your Bobby Firmino. She just runs and charges down. She's a workhorse. And I even now I'm thinking, do I take Beth Mead out and put Kirby in? Because it seems so harsh to leave her out because she's such a good player. But I see her in this first game as being that impact sub. If things aren't going well after 50 minutes, Kirby comes on, changes the game, England win.
See, I would say the same thing, but about Karen Carney. I'd see her as my impact sub.
That's what she was like on Saturday, wasn't it? Which is
And in the first game as well. But I don't know, Carney from the start for me, because of her experience and again having that stronger three in the midfield because of the way Scotland play or the potential way they could play. That's why, but I feel bad. I've never even met Fran Kirby and I feel bad.
Well, in terms of my lineup then, the one I would pick, again going along the 4-3-3 lines for the same reason. I think it's, call me boring, but it's probably safer in my eyes. Likewise, I'm going for the exact same back five again, so Bardsley, Bronze, Moulton, Bright and Greenwood. And then I'd have Jill Scott, Kira Walsh and Jade Moore as my midfielders. And then my front three are Nikita Parris, Fran Kirby and Beth Mead. Purely because I'm picturing this in my head. I like the idea of Fran Kirby being able to drop, and then both Nikita Parris and Beth Mead being able to go and run and cause all sorts of hassle for defenders. Probably not going to happen though, because as I said before, what I think Phil Neville's going to do is the lineup you gave us earlier, Ella, where it's going to be a 4-2-3-1 with Bardsley, Bronze, Horton, Bright, Greenwood, Scott and Walsh as your 2, then Fran Kirby as your number 10, and then Nikita Parris, Ellen White and Beth Mead up top. That's what I think he's going to do.
It's interesting that we've all said Alex Greenwood as left back, but I mean, Demi Stokes has not done anything wrong. Why is it that we have gone for Greenwood over Stokes?
I think Greenwood's had a great first season with Manchester United, and she's going to be absolutely buzzing with confidence after that going into World Cup. I'd quite like to see her as sort of, we talk about the sort of breath of fresh air in the squad that we see play, like Beth Mead being one of those. So I think, just her form this season in that side you can make a strong case for her out of that.
Form this season and the way she's taken over the captaincy as well for Manchester United. Big responsibility, considering it's their first season as a club, and to take that on is really quite impressive. And I've always really liked her delivery. I know it may have not been quite on point when she's played recently, but you know what she's capable of, particularly from dead ball scenarios, which is why Alex Greenwood just gets the nod, as good as Demi Stokes is.
It was interesting, if you listen back to the debate had with Remy, it was very much the case of almost set pieces versus speed, and in some ways Alex Greenwood isn't as likely to venture forward as much as Demi Stokes, but defensively she's slightly stronger and she's got the ability with the set pieces. But I mean, you could quite easily toss a coin and pick either of those players.
Exactly. So to round off, who do we think Phil Neville is going to pick for that game against Scotland?
I think he might go with one of those safer options, and I think he might stick Jade Moore in there. I think the danger with the lineup that I named and that you think Phil will name with Walsh, Scott and Kirby is that if Jill Scott ventures too far forward, Walsh is likely to be pretty isolated, and that's not the place you want to be in when Erin Cuthbert's running at you with the ball and can hit them from 30 yards, as we saw in the match against Jamaica last week. So I think to nullify that Scotland threat, he will probably put Jade Moore in there instead of Kirby, and we know he likes to play in that 4-3-3 as well, which is another reason that leads me to think he will do so.
Your prediction for Phil?
I wouldn't be surprised if he throws in a massive curveball. We've already discussed how anyone could start, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Staniforth comes into this team, or McManus instead of Bright. Don't know why, but I just wouldn't be surprised if there was something that we just hadn't thought about. I think we've all pretty much ruled out Jodie Taylor, which is unfortunate because I think she's a big game player and I think she will score goals and end her drought in this tournament. But
we also haven't talked Tony Duggan either.
No, which is unbelievable considering she's had a decent season at Barcelona. 27 years old, brilliant experience, scores goals.
It just proves the depth of the squad. Like, we've sort of forgotten about Tony Duggan because the likes of Beth Mead come in with 5 goals in her first 13 England appearance, and you know she's incredible on the wing. She can score goals. So you sort of think, you know, where's the place for Tony Duggan when you've got Parris, Mead, you've got White who can score goals. You almost can't fit them all in. You almost need a starting 15 to get the names that we want to see.
England versus England, don't you?
So after all that analysis, essentially our final conclusion is, who the hell knows?
Exactly.
So, as ever, professional. Since we're here, we'll mention Scotland because we've already touched on Erin Cuthbert and the amazing goal she scored against Jamaica. And I suppose, what can we expect from that team? Because 2 years ago at the Euros, when again it was England-Scotland in the first game, and it was a quite resounding victory to England in the end. This is a totally different Scotland team to what it was 2 years ago. In such a short space of time, there's so much quality in there. So what can we actually expect from them this time around?
Absolutely, it's going to be a completely different game, and I think it's even going to be a completely different game than a lot of us would have predicted when it came out of the draw in December. I think you see Scotland, they don't have the same history as the Lionesses do when it comes to women's football, and I think some people thought, oh yeah, great rivalry in that game, but England have got it in the bag. And actually seeing Scotland perform over the last few months, you think that isn't the case at all. I think the way they've captured the nation in a similar way to the Lionesses have is incredible. I think it was 18,000 at Hampton Park for their
just
game,
over 18,000,
something along those lines. And I think they've also, maybe not the mentality that England have, they can win it, but they know that they can go there and cause an upset. So yeah, I think it'll be a completely different game. I think you can tell in their match against Jamaica when they fell behind, the tenacity that they showed to get back in it, and in the end they got the win and it paid off. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really, really tough game for England.
Definitely. It's also a Scotland team that beat Brazil relatively recently as well. So many good players to watch. Think Kim Little, think Rachel Coursey, Caroline Weir, Erin Cuthbert, I know we've mentioned again. When I was working in Scotland, she was 16, 17, and people was talking about her then as well. So when she moved down south, and considering what she's doing now for Chelsea, and she's still 20. So
That's
much
the
promise
thing.
there. I know, it's ridiculous how young she still is and how good she is. So who are the standouts for you?
Those you've named, and then if you look at their forward line alone, Lisa Evans, Jane Ross, Claire Emsley, Erin Cuthbert, I wouldn't want to play against any of them. Kim Little, world class, has been for so long, and it was so good that the injury she suffered earlier this season wasn't overly serious in terms of ruling her out of this World Cup.
Yeah. And of course she missed the Euros as well.
Yeah, and she missed the Euros, but unlike Jordan Nobbs, who is missing this World Cup, imagine what she could bring to that England side as well. I mean, it would only make our debate over a starting 11 even tougher.
That's the last thing we need right now.
But then you look at, they're not just brilliant going forward, but if you look at the experience of the defence, Rachel Coursey, 124 caps, Rachel Coursey, 109 caps, Jen Beattie, 124 caps, 99 caps of Hayley Lauder. And then you look at the number of players who've played in the Champions League against some of the best, either for Glasgow, or the teams that are playing, the players that play over here in England, or even the likes of Lana Cleland, who plays in Italy and Fiorentina. The experience of playing other nations and other styles of football is massively grown, and it's not a massively different team in terms of personnel from the Euros, but in terms of the step up that they've taken in these last 2 years is massive. And we saw in the last game they played the Euros when they beat Spain 1-0 potential there, and I think they're going to fulfil that this tournament, and they're going to be tough.
So in terms of the step up then, how much credit do we give Shelley Kerr, considering this is now her team because she took over after the Euros?
She has a 64% win ratio. She's won 14 out of 22 games, apparently, according to Wikipedia. Not entirely. I didn't properly check.
Well, it's
that,
supposed to be updated now, isn't it? After
it was
what we saw on
updated.
social.
It was not updated after the Jamaica game, so I factored that in. But yeah, she's given them the belief that we were talking about with England earlier. This is a team that's used to winning, and this isn't a team that's going to be thinking, oh, we can get third place in this group. This is a Scotland team that's going to be wanting to win the group against England and Japan, and God, it's going to be tough playing them.
It's a much tougher draw than people think. It's one of the toughest groups in there for this tournament.
Yeah, when you consider Japan are in there as well, and
who
is tough.
Who knows what's going to happen with Argentina as well? They've obviously had a lot of issues, but then a lot of growth in terms of women's football over the last few months, and you can never write off Argentina in anything, I don't think.
It's going to be a tough group, but interesting to watch. Very interesting. So bring on that very first game. That is it for part 1. We'll be back after this short break for part 2, where we give you our predictions for the tournament as a whole. Follow SportSpielpod on Twitter, Facebook and on Instagram, or go to our website sportspielonline.com. Okie dokes, we're here for part 2, where we give our predictions and what we think is going to happen in terms of the tournament, and then when you listen back to this in a month's time, you can see how wrong we all were. But we'll give it a go anyway. So the first category, if you like, that we're going to talk about, which is one we've asked to a couple of our guests already on the previous shows, is the player to watch in the tournament. There's quite a lot to pick from, I should clarify, but I know you've certainly got quite a few listed down on your shortlist. I'm sure you do as well. So we'll try and narrow it down to one categorical player to watch, and we'll bring in some others into the discussion as well. So who can we look forward to seeing on TV?
That's exactly right. There's so many to pick from, and obviously that's really refreshing with women's football now. Like before, in previous tournaments through the 90s and early noughties, you would have looked at the likes of Marta and your Carly Lloyds to pick, but we've got so many now, and I'm going to go outside of the main contenders for my player to watch. It's not a very out there prediction, as I'm sure you've all heard of her, but I'm going to go with Sam Kerr of Australia.
There we go, right on my list.
Still who crossed her off already, Bagsy the first shout. Yeah, obviously she's a goal machine. She's the all-time top scorer in the W League outside in Australia, and she's got 2 back-to-back golden boots. I think that she will be the player that could carry that Australia team a fair way through the tournament with the record she has in front of goal. She's very well known for her backflip celebration when she scores, so if you see that when Australia are playing, you know that Sam Kerr's got one in the goal. So I'm going to go with her just because I think she could be a player that could lift a side that otherwise maybe aren't in contention for getting further than the quarterfinals, but I think with her in their ranks, they might have an outside chance. Very
special goal scorer, so can't argue with that.
Remy mentioned her as well, and I think everyone's mentioned her. She's going to be...
Yeah, Laura Bassett's player to watch as well.
I've never actually watched her live. I've only ever seen highlights, so I'm definitely going to be tuning into Australia just to see what the hype's all about. Mine, I'm going to say slightly left field, but I think you'll understand why. And I've gone for Danielle van der Donk as my player to watch, because everything good Arsenal did this season she was involved in. Obviously Miedemar grabbing the headlines, Beth Mead grabbing the headlines, but I genuinely don't know if I've ever watched Van der Donk play badly. She can do everything. She's got great touch, her passing is exceptional, tackling, she scores goals. Maybe not the greatest in the air because she's a little bit short, but I'm genuinely, we'll talk about this later, but I think the Dutch could go very far in this tournament, and there were several names that sprang to mind when I was thinking of players to watch out for. Lucy Bronze, as Phil Neville said, best player in the world. Is she not? Who cares? She's brilliant. Alex Morgan, if the USA are going to win it, it's going to be because of Alex Morgan. Saki Kumagai, Japanese defender, plays for Lyon, 28 years old, 100-something caps, has won everything going, including the World Cup in 2011. And Eugenie Le Sommer, the French player, but the one that came to mind was Danielle van der Donk because I just think she's just a brilliant footballer.
And with that, pretty much everyone on my list has been taken and talked about, because I also had Alex Morgan to discuss. Likewise, Miedemar was on there, and Le Sommer. And Sam Kerr was my player to watch for the tournament, my number one pick. But I will throw out Kim Little as well, because she is a very special midfielder, and it's her first chance to shine at a major competition, because of course she wasn't there at the Euros 2 years ago. So very excited to see how she dictates the play within that Scotland team. Next category is breakout star, which got Laura Bassett thinking. She wasn't really expecting that one to come her way, and she ended up picking Nikita Paris as her breakout star. Again, it's something that Phil Neville's mentioned in the past. She was good, but recently she's elevated herself to world-class level, and Laura Bassett's argument was that this is the tournament where she announces herself on the world stage. This is also Nikita Paris, who is now part of that formidable Lyon team, which gets more and more scary as every year passes. So, breakout stars, everyone.
That's exactly it. I think you can make that case for Nikita Paris. It's going to be her first World Cup, and that's what I base my breakout star on. It's not necessarily a player that no one's heard of that's suddenly announcing themselves to the women's football scene, but it's a player who's made an incredible step up in the last year, and that is Beth Mead for England. See, just a year ago she was I've just stolen Alasdair's player, so he's annoyed at me again. But yeah, go to Beth Mead. A year ago, she was, on the periphery of the squad. She got a chance, and we've seen the brilliant articles coming out recently about how Phil Neville rang her up and said, you need to be hungrier for England. She got angry about it, and since then she's really performed. I think, as I mentioned earlier, she's got 5 goals in her last 13 appearances, and as we've all seen, she's become the queen of the cropped, which I hope we might be seeing one of in the World Cup. I think she's a real breath of fresh air for the side. She's got a brilliant delivery. I think she could be a real threat up front for us. As I said, she's not exactly unknown. If you've paid attention to the WSL this season, she's been, alongside the likes of Van der Donk, one of those cogs in the Arsenal side that have led them to winning the title. But I think she's my player of the tournament to stand out in France for sure.
I should clarify, we haven't seen each other's notes before this.
I also had Beth Mead as my breakout. I'm slightly biased, being a Sunderland fan and having seen Beth Mead live. The speed she possesses is just unbelievable, and I remember watching her in a Continental Cup game against Man City, and I think Sunderland lost 3-1 that night. And this was a Man City side with Jill Scott, Lucy Bronze, Nikita Paris was on loan at the time, Karen Bardsley. And Beth Mead was causing them all sorts of troubles. And I remember thinking then, this she's going to be brilliant. And she'll disappear off the radar for a bit. Has had to reinvent herself, because she was a central striker. She's now reinvented herself as a winger, and she's brilliant. She's just utterly brilliant. And again, Nikita Paris as well. Those two on the wings, either side of the central striker, is going to be something special to watch. But other players, Erin Cuthbert, obviously we know how good Erin Cuthbert is, but the whole world, do they know how good Erin Cuthbert is? Probably not. And she's gonna shine. And then I was looking through stats, and I was looking through sort of performances in other leagues and things. And these aren't players I've seen play, but young players who've got some incredibly impressive stats for their age. First of all, Leah Schuller plays for Germany. She's 21 years old, 8 goals in 13 appearances. Scores a goal every other game for SGS Essen in the female Bundesliga, which is arguably the strongest league in the world in terms of overall competitiveness. And she's been handed the number 7 shirt for this tournament, which makes me think she's going to be starting most games for Germany. So they're definitely one to look out for there. And another Australian, Caitlin Ford. She's currently the top scorer in the NWSL at the moment with 3 goals. So she's level with Christine Sinclair, who scored all of those in one game. And 3 goals in 7 games. She already has 16 goals in 72 caps, and she's only 24. And playing alongside Sam Kerr, I think we can expect to see fireworks from those two in this tournament.
Definitely. So, bearing all that in mind, we move on to tournament underdog in terms of teams. One of mine is Australia, before you nick it.
Don't worry, I didn't have them down.
Again, based on the likes of having Sam Kerr and the fact that they've never really lived up to their full potential in previous tournaments, and now that they have the firepower to go along with the talent that they had already, maybe this is the year we see a switch in mentality, because, as again we've talked about it, how important that is, that they can actually get beyond the quarterfinals, which I believe is their previous best, and actually make it to the semi-finals and possibly the final after that, because there is a lot of talent there, and a lot of talk, particularly with coaching and management on that team as well. So Australia are my tournament underdog, but I will throw in Scotland again, because I don't think people on the face of it expect as much as what we think they can deliver. I think there's so much more to come from that Scotland team, considering the players they have and the management that they've got, and maybe Wales-esque from the Euros, however many years ago that was now, but possibly something similar there.
I had one team written down for this one, which I originally thought was a really bold claim, and that was Scotland. But the more I've thought about it, the more I've talked about it, we've talked about it today, the more I believe they can be such a threat in Group D. As we've discussed, they've got the calibre of players to succeed, and I reckon they could cause a couple of real upsets in our group. And as much as I hate to say it, I'm going to be bold, and I reckon they might take points off us on Sunday. Not sure if they'll come out on top, but I reckon it'll be tight. I think they might hold us to a draw on Sunday, which could be another reality check for the Lionesses.
And you say I have bold claims.
You're not going along with the draw?
I could see it happening. I don't think it will, but I could see it happening.
I could also see it happening, in fairness.
I hate to say it, but hopefully not.
Your tournament underdog. Away you go.
I've got 4. and I'm struggling to pick which one I think is going to do best.
Of course you've got 4.
New Zealand was one of the 4 because they've beaten Norway and England in recent weeks. We all know what their tactics are going to be against the big teams. They're going to sit back and going to try and beat them on the counter. But with Rosie White up front and Gregorius, I mean, that could be a very effective tactic. They've got arguably the toughest group alongside England. They've got Canada and the Netherlands in there. So whether they can get out of that group or not, I'm not sure. But I can genuinely see them causing a few upsets. Spain have made some massive improvements in recent years. They've pumped money now into the club system, and I think we're going to see that coming into effect in this tournament. I don't think they can go on and spring a surprise and win it, but I think we will see them do better than they ever have done before. They only made their first World Cup appearance in 2015, but they've got some of the best players in the world, and I mean, they've got China and South Africa in their group alongside Germany, so I'd be surprised if they didn't get out of that. Sweden, the most consistently inconsistent team possibly out there, 16th at the last World Cup in 2015, but the next year won an Olympic silver medal. 2 years later won the Algarve Cup, then this year in the Algarve Cup came 5th. They bombed out of the Euros in 2017, so who knows what's going to turn up. But with Magdalena Eriksson and a couple of other players we see over here in the WSL in their defence, they could do well. But I think my underdog team is going to be Norway, which is slightly surprising given that they're a powerhouse of women's football, but they've been nowhere in recent years. But they came above the Dutch in qualifying. They forced the Dutch to go through the playoff system to get through to this tournament, and that says something to me because I think the Dutch are an exceptional team, and they beat them in that final game when the pressure was on. I think this is a team that performs under pressure, has changed their mentality. Obviously no Ada Hegerberg, but they've still got a team full of quality, and with Mjelde and at centre back, Chelsea captain, I think they could spring a huge surprise in this tournament.
Go along with that as well. Top scorer for the competition, what do we think?
I'm going to go with someone from the host nation. We've mentioned her once or twice on this podcast already, Eugénie Le Sommer. I think her goal scoring record just absolutely speaks for itself. I think it's something like 160 and 175 for Lyon. And she's got 73 goals in 150 caps for France. And I think that's only 10 or so away from being one of France's all-time top scorers, male or female. So she's going to be such a threat. She's, a consistent 20 goals a season striker, won the title with Lyon for 6 consecutive years, and I back France to do well as well. So I think they're a host nation, they're a good side. I think they'll go far in this tournament, and with her up front, I think she could top the list for Golden Boots come July.
Definitely.
I haven't had much time to prepare this one, so nothing rogue from me. I could see Nikita Paris genuinely being one of the top scorers, but I think it's becoming slightly a bit more of a Dutch loving for me, like my Burnley loving of previous episodes.
Noticing a theme.
Vivian Miedema, I think just the way she's performed this season and last, and with Van der Donk and Shanice van der Sanden supporting her, just a number of names giving her the support. She's a natural finisher. I don't think I've seen many players, male or female, with the ability to finish so clinically as she's got. And I think the Dutch will go far, and I think she'll be one of the reasons for that.
Likewise, she was also one of my top scorers to consider after the season she's just had in the WSL, breaking the scoring record for a single season. But again, I'm going to throw open the Sam Kerr praise, because I think she's definitely up there in terms of top scorer chat. So she's my pick for top scorer. Likewise, we've got to consider the likes of Alex Morgan as well, potentially for that category as well. But now we come on to the big one. This is the one where we put our money where our mouths are, and where people can laugh at us later when we all get proved wrong. Who is your winner for France 2019?
This is such a tough one. I've got 4 teams written down, and I still haven't quite made my mind up. So, the odds are in the USA's favour, looking at their form over the last couple of years. And I really, really want to say England, but I think I'll just curse it. So
that's that British mentality coming in again.
Exactly. I'm one of those. I don't want to get carried away. So I'm going to go with France to win it on home soil. As I've mentioned just now, they've got Eugénie Le Sommer leading the line, but also they've got their whole core of their team is made up from the women's football powerhouse that is Lyon. They've got Wendy Renard at the heart of the defence with over 100 caps. They've got Henri in midfield, who again took the captaincy from Renard, and that just shows the calibre she has as a player. One of the best in her position, a tireless defensive midfielder. They've got Casarino on the wing, who's got that pace and ruthlessness in front of goal and can feed it into Le Sommer. So it's a really powerful team they've got there. And I think looking at the men did it last year, they came close in the Euros on their home soil. I'm sure there's a massive buzz in France at the moment surrounding their national sides, and I think maybe they'll be the ones to come up on top.
I have also picked France. I think
Done it again.
But like I said, the home advantage I think has a big part to play. Think 2017 when we saw the Dutch go on at home and win that tournament as well. And I think there's a real buzz in France, for the tournament, but imagine being the first countries to hold the World Cup, both on the men's side and the women's side. That would be a massive draw and motivation for that team as well. And they have the quality to back it up. So I've said it before on this show, it's always been France as my winners for me. I do know, however, that the third voice on this podcast has a different pick.
You know I like being different.
Which you might have noticed from the theme we've been chatting about so far.
Yeah, it's England. No, I think England will get to the final. I mean, I'm going to be proved massively wrong. I don't think France will make the final. I think they'll get to the semis. But it seems stupid to rule out the US as well. We've barely talked about them, and they've got Carly Lloyd, Megan Rapinoe, Alex Morgan. They've got some stupidly talented players in their squad, but something just doesn't quite feel right with them at the moment. And I look at this Dutch team, and I just think...
There was the theme.
The quality throughout is similar to England. The quality throughout is unbelievable. You've got Gertz in goal, and we've seen Sari van Veenendaal in goal for Arsenal most of the season, and she doesn't even get close to coming in front of Gertz at the moment. Van Lunteren, Van der Gracht and Dekker in defence. Van der Donk, a new Arsenal signing, Roord in midfield, and then Shanice van der Sande, Vivian Miedema and Lieke Martens up front. It's just like, when does it stop?
You've got Jackie Groener as well in their midfield to boost the ranks.
They've
got an incredible side.
They're in blistering form as well. Their last 3 warm-up games, they beat Mexico 2-0, Chile 7-0, Australia 3-0, and that Australia game was only 2 days ago as we record. I'm going to be proved massively wrong now. They're going to bomb out, and they've got a tough group. They've got Canada and New Zealand in their group, so they're going to be given, as England are, they're going to be given a test early on. But for me, where they've come from, their women had no history a few years ago, and now look at them. They're ranked 7th or 8th in the world, but they're European champions. Yes, they had to come through the playoffs to get to this tournament, but again, I think as we talked about earlier, that'll be the kick up the bottoms they needed. And I don't know. I haven't looked at the schedule how England and the Dutch will only meet in the final. Whether they meet before, I'm not quite sure, but I think it will be an England-Netherlands final, and I think the Netherlands will win it.
So, one-word answers. Where will England finish then?
Runners-up, France-England final.
Runners-up, England-Dutch final.
Now, I'm going to sound really negative now, but I've got to stick to my word because I've already said it on air before. 4th.
One place lower than last time.
Yes.
Who are they going to lose to in the bronze medal match?
Oh, well, I'll say the States, actually. I wouldn't be surprised.
You'd like to think, well...
Possibly. But who knows? We'll all be proved wrong anyway.
They've got to be, surely.
Yeah, exactly. To throw it open for anyone who wants to play along at home, Paddy Power's favourites are France and the US joint top. Then second rather is Germany, and then it's England.
It's incredible we haven't mentioned Germany as well.
I was about to say that.
Second in the world, and we have not mentioned them once, apart from one of my breakout players.
Got the Rio gold medal to their name as well, so yeah, we really haven't spoken about them enough.
Which ultimately shows how far the game has come along in the last few years, which is why I end our discussion on this very large question. So prepare yourselves. Will France 2019 be the turning point for the women's game that we have been crying out for so long?
Absolutely. In England, yes. I think it's come along massively even in the last couple of months. I think the main thing that's helping is the media attention. Even at club level, we've had things like the West Ham documentary this season I am a West Ham fan. I'm not being incredibly biased, but it is great. And we've seen the BBC One documentary of the Lionesses, and there's been a way bigger effort in getting people to know the players and people to engage with them, engage with their character, and bring them to the forefront of media attention. I think before it was just a case of, oh, the women's team are playing, but I don't really know who they are. No one could really name anyone, maybe except Steph Moulton and Alex Scott and Kelly Smith, the likes of those kind of players. But now I think people know their names, people are getting to know the faces, and that's thanks to the media attention that's covering the women's game. And I think with all the games of the World Cup being shown on the BBC, that's only going to help grow the game further.
For the growth of, I'm going to go slightly differently here, for the growth of the game worldwide, I think this tournament is going to be a huge game changer. For the growth of the game in this country specifically, it's only going to happen if England gets the final. There are a lot of men of a certain age out there who are ready and waiting, sat next to their keyboards, waiting for England to bomb out of this tournament, say "I told you so," or moan about something or other. And they've done the FA and the team and the players, Phil Neville, have done an incredible job inspiring the youngsters. They're not the issue. It is the people who have their set mindsets, and the only way England are going to change that is if they win, and if they win playing attractive football.
It's a sad reality, isn't it, that they almost need to place higher than the men to get respect from a certain...
We saw, there was the news announced today that Tracy Neville is going to step down as the netball head coach, and what she's done and what that squad have done for netball in this country is insane. And yet, as when that was announced, there was within 2 minutes, I was reading the comments on Facebook, and there were still men taking the piss or what have you, and they were just sitting there waiting to type something, and that is after a Commonwealth victory and the work they've done. So England are going to have to do something really special to change the mindsets of those guys, but I think what they have done in the lead up to this has been incredible. There's a generation of youngsters coming through now, male and female, who know this team. They feel relatable they feel like the team are relatable, and there are lots of young girls who aspire to be these players. So the wins have happened already in that terms.
Success breeds success a lot of the time. Part of my dissertation at university focused on the 1995 Rugby World Cup in South Africa, which was won by South Africa. And think of what that did for that country as well. Maybe not in terms of promoting sport, but in terms of bringing people together and uniting them behind something. Likewise, I do think we're seeing the tide turning, bringing West Ham back into it, and think of the FA Cup final last month and how annoyed a lot of the fans were that the Premier League game for the men's side wasn't moved so that fans could go to both games on that Saturday, which I think says a lot about people's attitudes to both sides of the game now. And yeah, likewise, it being on the BBC, free to air, every single game, big game changer in terms of bringing it into people's living rooms and houses across the country. So let's all hope it is as we expect, and we see the change that we've all pushed for and want. And with that is it for this special episode of the podcast. I must say thank you to Ella for coming on and providing some wise wisdom, which sometimes we lack on this show.
All the time we lack on this show.
Wait till all my predictions are wrong.
That's true.
Yeah, wait till I'm right with everything I said.
Yeah, re-listen to this.
Wait till the Dutch win and
we'll see how it goes. But yeah, you'll have to come on as well, because of course there's the Netball World Cup straight afterwards, which you're going to.
Yes.
So that should be
wait.
fun as well.
Yeah.
No way jealous at all whatsoever.
Kept that hidden. Well done.
I might even back England for that one, but we'll save that for another day.
Oh, that's a conversation we need to have.
I'm going to go with Uganda.
Ooh, more curveballs in the corner. But yeah, with that, there's some final messages to send out before we wrap up. Obviously, the Offside Rule podcast, you can find some of our bits and pieces on there from the previous episodes we've done. Give them a follow, subscribe to their show. Their website's offsiderulepodcast.com, and you can also catch some pieces from myself and Ella throughout the tournament. Hint, hint there. Nice little push for that. Remember to subscribe to our own show. We're on Audio Boom, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of those places. And do get in touch on social media. All of our handles are sportspielpod. And as a helicopter flies over our head, that's time for me to end this episode. The last one is tomorrow, where it's just myself and Will chatting about some deep and meaningful things about the grassroots sport in this country, which was actually quite a good debate, which we tapped into.
I felt like for the first time ever I made some intelligent points.
After, 2 and a bit years, they had to come finally. But yeah, with that is it for this episode, everyone. Enjoy what is left until the tournament kicks off on Friday. We will see you tomorrow.